The long-awaited Monday, July 21st episode of CBS's The Bold and the Beautiful blasts open with revelations so startling they verge on the miraculous. After weeks of anguish, Liam Spencer learns that the malignant brain tumor threatening to snatch away his life has been entirely removed, and not merely reduced or rendered inoperable, but excised down to microscopic nothingness. The doctors who once trembled at the tumor's inoperability now stand in awe, awarding him a second lease on life. For Liam, this moment is nothing short of a rebirth. The world he thought he was leaving behind, Kelly's laughter, Beth's shy smiles, the quiet contentment of fatherhood, is suddenly stretched out before him once more, wide open and beckoning. Guilt and gratitude collide in his chest as he reflects on the bullet that nearly cost him everything, on every clingy hug from Kelly he once feared might be his last, on every quiet moment with Beth that now feels infinitely precious. He vows, in that cathedral-quiet hospital room, to be the father he's always wanted to be, a guiding hand, a steadfast presence, a protector whose love outshines even his darkest doubts. There are no grand speeches, no cinematic declarations, only Liam's steady gaze, the unspoken promise that he will honor this second chance by living with every ounce of bravery he can muster, by filling each dawn with laughter and wonder, by never, ever taking a single heartbeat for granted. Behind the scenes of this miracle looms the calculating figure of Grace Buckingham, whose role in Liam's supposed recovery raises more questions than it answers. Originally, Liam's diagnosis arrived in hushed tones, an inoperable tumor, swelling his brain, any surgical intervention ruled out as too dangerous. When Liam collapsed in the Forrester mansion, fractured by fear and pain, the doctors spoke only of swelling, never whispering a single syllable about a tumor until the very moment of surgery. Then, as though by magic, the very next MRI reveals the presence of the tumor, and Grace, flush with $1 million payoff, announces to Bill Spencer that it has vanished entirely. Was the tumor truly overlooked in that first scan, the technicians so incompetent they missed a life-threatening lesion? Or did Grace, in her relentless pursuit of profit and power, manufacture the whole calamity, patenting the procedure, selling it to Bill as the only way to save his son? And if the tumor was never there in the first place, what does that say about the procedure's efficacy? Bill, desperate to believe, brushes aside Finn's requests for success rates, protocol documents, any shred of scientific rigor that might lend credence to this breakthrough. His dismissals, born of blind faith in Grace's whispered promises, set the stage for yet another combustible revelation, that Grace's words may be bought and sold, her smile concealing a web of lies spun for the highest bidder. As Liam wakes to the news of his health, none of this crosses his mind. He breathes easy, his future bright. But the ominous shadows gathering around Grace suggest that the calm won't last long. Enter Dr. John Finn Finnegan, whose instincts bristle with skepticism. When Bill talks up the procedure, Finn's brow furrows. He demands clinical data, study results, protocol specifics, only to be rebuffed, told that only Grace can provide that level of detail. Bill waves him off, convinced that love and money overcome all the pedantic concerns of science. Finn senses a rat, and he wastes no time. He approaches Bridget Forrester, the only person whose expertise and judgment he trusts implicitly. Together, they pore over every shred of paperwork Grace may have signed, every covert memo from the neurology department, every whispered testimony from nurses caught off guard by the sudden vanishing of a tumor. As Finn and Bridget work side by side, combing through hospital charts and digital records, they fall into a rhythm of collaboration so intense it borders on intimate. Funny glances exchanged over light table x-rays, a hesitant touch on the back when one of them stumbles over a contradictory entry, laughter that bubbles up unbidden as they recall their first clumsy meeting years ago. All of it hints at something more than professional camaraderie. Their investigation becomes a magnet, drawing them close, forging a bond as they inched toward the heart of Grace's duplicity. And when Grace finally senses the noose tightening, when her polished smile cracks and her carefully curated composure begins to fray, it will be Finn and Bridget who stand before her, weapons drawn, evidence and unbreakable trust in their convictions. Will Grace crack under their scrutiny, or will she unleash yet another layer of deception to protect her million-dollar scheme? Meanwhile, Liam grapples with emotions he never anticipated. Relief laced with survivor's guilt, gratitude tinged with suspicion. He knows his brother Wyatt would have moved heaven and earth to save him. He knows Hope's prayers were unceasing, that Steffi's strength was a lifeline when he could no longer hold on. And now, with Beth's smile waiting for him at every corner and Kelly's tiny hand still clutching his finger, he feels both invincible and achingly vulnerable. The prospect of rebuilding his life thrills him. Dating again, dreaming again, loving again, but he also wonders if the world will ever feel the same. Can he dare to relinquish the armor he's worn these past weeks, admit that he needs people, that he's not the solitary warrior he pretended to be? As Finn and Bridget close in on the truth, as Bill's blind trust in Grace threatens to unravel his empire, and as Grace fights to keep her fortune and her reputation intact, Liam stands at the crossroads between innocence and knowledge. If the procedure was a sham, if Grace gambled with his life for money, how will he reconcile that betrayal with the miracle he so desperately hoped for? And what will become of Grace when the curtain falls on her performance? On Monday night, The Bold and the Beautiful doesn't just entertain. It reminds us that hope can spring from the most impossible places, that love can heal wounds no scalpel can touch, and that the greatest drama unfolds not just in boardrooms and operating theaters, but in the silent moments when hearts choose whether to forgive or to fight. Stay tuned, because when these secrets surface, no one will emerge unscathed, and the Spencer family will discover that survival is only the beginning. The moment Grace's secret began to unravel, Bill Spencer went into full-on crisis mode, tearing through the halls of the hospital like a man possessed. With Liam still unconscious, hooked to monitors and ventilators, and the specter of prosecution looming larger with each whispered rumor of fabricated medical data, Bill decided that the only way to protect his son, and, by extension, his own empire, was to spirit Liam away before the authorities could descend. Under cover of night, he loaded the unconscious youth onto a private medical transport jet, its cabin outfitted with every conceivable life support system, then flew to Los Angeles with the obsessive precision that had built his fortune. By dawn's early light, Liam lay in a gilded bedroom at the Spencer estate in Bel Air, the soft hum of security systems and the rustle of silk sheets substituting for hospital beeps and nursing staff. Bill told the few trusted bodyguards stationed on every floor that Liam needed quiet convalescence, that the hospital had discharged him under a self-care protocol. Every window was locked, every visitor logged and vetted, and cameras monitored every corridor. Bill's message to the outside world was simple: his son was safe, his recovery private. Yet beneath that veneer of paternal devotion simmered the raw urgency of a father who knew too well how swiftly the tide of fortune could turn, and who would stop at nothing to control the narrative. When the police arrived the next morning, gray uniforms standing awkwardly in the ornate foyer of the Bel Air mansion, badges gleaming under crystal chandeliers, Bill met them at the door with the practiced calm of a man accustomed to negotiating with adversaries. He denied any current association with the hospital that had performed Liam's surgery, claiming that in the confusion of Liam's emergency discharge, responsibility had shifted entirely to his own security team. He blamed the hospital's security department for the disappearance. Perhaps an overzealous guard decided to relocate my son for his own safety, he said, voice steady, expression unflinching. The officers scribbled notes, exchanged glances, and asked to see Liam's medical records and the discharge paperwork. Bill handed them a stack of documents stamped and signed by Grace Buckingham herself, detailing a self-care release that bore no mention of the procedure's groundbreaking and controversial nature. The police accepted the paperwork, but left with heavy brows and unsettled eyes, a tacit promise to return if inconsistencies emerged. As the double doors closed behind them, Bill's relief was palpable, yet nowhere near complete. He knew that Finn and Bridget, armed with their own discoveries of missing MRI scans and whispered testimonies from skeptical nurses, would press the district attorney to issue subpoenas. A legal storm was gathering, and only by keeping Liam firmly within his fortress could Bill hope to buy enough time to silence Grace's critics, rewrite medical records, and, if necessary, construct an impenetrable legal fortress of his own. Meanwhile, in a modest office cluttered with case files and digital tablets, Dr. John Finn Finnegan and Bridget Forrester pored over every shred of evidence they could gather. Finn's brow was furrowed as he scrolled through an email chain between Grace and a lab technician that hinted at protocol deviations, while Bridget's sharp eyes traced the signature on Liam's so-called self-care release. Every note they took felt like uncovering a brick from a crumbling wall. Remove enough, and the whole edifice would collapse. They coordinated with a seasoned investigative attorney, drafting subpoenas for hospital surveillance footage, lab logs, and Grace's financial records. Each revelation, like the discovery that the first MRI report had not mentioned any tumor at all, fueled their conviction that Grace had orchestrated the entire drama for profit. And as each piece snapped into place, testimony from a nurse who overheard Grace boasting of her $1 million payment, shipment records for an experimental neuroagent that had never been cleared by the FDA, their resolve hardened. But they also knew that Bill's resources were formidable. His legal team could file motions to quash subpoenas, invoke executive privilege over personal security logs, and intimidate witnesses with non-disclosure agreements backed by threats of ruinous litigation. The battle lines were drawn, and Finn and Bridget braced themselves for a courtroom showdown that would test not only their legal acumen, but their emotional endurance. Back at the Bel Air mansion, Liam's unconscious form lay bathed in the golden California morning light, oblivious to the drama unfolding beyond the heavy drapes. Bill visited him each hour, whispering reassurances into his ear, promising that this nightmare would soon be over and that Daddy would see to it personally. He adjusted the infusion lines, checked the ventilator settings, and even drifted off to sleep in an armchair by Liam's bedside, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Yet in his dreams, he was neither a wealthy magnate nor a devoted father, but a man shackled by the one secret that could unravel everything: Grace's clandestine formula for tumor eradication. A procedure so revolutionary it could have cured untold millions, yet so ethically compromised it threatened his entire legacy. If the court seized that data, if the medical board launched an inquiry, every asset he held, Spencer Publications, the Beacon Hills Vineyard, the Forrester Creations partnership, could be jeopardized. And if Liam woke before the danger had passed, if he regained consciousness and demanded to know the truth, Bill's empire could crumble under the weight of paternal betrayal. As dusk settled over the mansion, the first legal notices began to arrive. Certified letters bearing the county seal, court-issued subpoenas with crisp lettering, each one a future's contract for conflict, binding Bill in obligations he could scarcely evade. He read them in the privacy of his study, wrists drumming on the mahogany desk as he calculated his next moves. Firewalls of character witnesses, experts ready to testify to the procedure's efficacy. Every conceivable stratagem had to be deployed. Yet even as he marshaled these defenses, a deeper question gnawed at him: if he succeeded in keeping Liam safe, if he managed to discredit Finn and Bridget, at what cost would his soul pay? The mansion's windows reflected his haunted eyes as he stared into the night, aware that the greatest battles are waged not in courtrooms or operating theaters, but within the recesses of the heart. In that moment, the lines between fatherhood and ambition blurred, and Bill Spencer faced the ultimate reckoning: protect his son, even if it meant betraying the truth, or surrender to the forces determined to expose every secret he held dear. When the police returned, this time armed with warrants and fresh suspicions, Bill stood ready in the foyer once more. The game had shifted from denial to defiance. The fortress of documents and bodyguards that had once seemed invincible now bore the weight of imminent siege. Finn and Bridget watched from the courthouse steps, cameras flashing, determination radiating from their resolves. Grace's name echoed through legal chambers and security briefings alike, a reminder that no millionaire's helicopter pad could lift him above the law's reach. And somewhere, in the quiet alcove of a hospital chapel or the hush of Liam's secluded bedroom, the greatest question remained unanswered. Would love triumph over deception? Would truth pierce the thickest armor of wealth? And would a young man's life rewritten in secrecy find its redemption in the light of day? In the relentless swirl of this legal maelstrom, one thing was certain: the bold and the beautiful had never felt more real, more dangerous, or more heartbreakingly human. And as the final gavel loomed on the horizon, every secret, every lie, and every unspoken vow prepared to collide in a verdict that would change the Spencer family forever.